Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video, we'll be covering the changes the monks have gotten this week. You should be also aware that in the first week of September, which as I'm making this video, it should be out Tuesday. That means probably tomorrow, Wednesday, there should be another update, and monks should get even more updates. Blizzard is aware of a lot of the bug issues that are happening with monks. So if you're a Mistweaver, Windwalker, tank monk, there are some bugs. Blizzard is aware and they're trying to clean it up as best as they can. But in this video, we're going to take a look at the Celestials buff update that monks have gotten in this recent build. Now, while this is a buff update for where monks are at on Celestials, which have been buffed significantly depending on your spec, there are a couple minor changes to address here as well. First of all, Brewmasters can finally go to dual-wielding weapons, which is kind of cool. The thing with dual-wielding weapons, though, there's no, like, passive buffs whether you have a staff, whether you have two one-handers for monks right now. So it seems that dual-wielding could potentially be the meta, mostly because you could put two enchants on two weapons, instead of one enchant on one big weapon. I think as you're progressing through raids and dungeons, if you see a weapon that is a staff or a polearm and it is a higher item level than both of your weapons, then you should probably take it because it'll most likely be an upgrade for your tank capabilities or DPS capabilities. But essentially, you would want to end up at the end of your road for your monk gearing when you have best assault pieces with two one-handers, or at least it is presumed. Brewmasters also have had a change with stagger. On Wowhead, there was an update for the stagger where it now will stagger a portion of magic damage. Now, looking at the stagger, yes, it does have it. Affects magic attacks to 35% effectiveness. At some point, Blizzard removed this buff. It looks like this buff is back in the game. Also, Taunt now has the movement speed increase back into the Monk playstyle. Monk being the one class that can taunt enemies and have them run faster, which for rogues, shadow step into an enemy and then having to sprint right after them have been annoying, but monks will have a bit more control over the enemies. So bringing monks into raids with this fast taunt to move boss from like one side of the room to another might still be a viable strategy. But let's take a look at the Celestial updates that all three specs have gotten. With the Brewmaster, we have the Ox, the Invoke Niuzao, the Black Ox, otherwise known as Dave. It has a 3-minute cooldown, 40-yard range, and the update that they've gotten in this blue post reads: the damage of Niuzao's stomp is now increased by 25% off the stagger that you have purified in the last 5 seconds. So when you summon Dave, he's going to stomp at enemies regularly and try to do as much damage as possible. He'll also help split some of the stagger damage as you're taking, let's say, heavy damage on your monk. So with him being able to stagger a certain point of the damage that you're taking, you being able to purify your stagger to make yourself as healthy for your healer will help Dave do more damage. I don't really know if this is going to be a crazy amount of damage when it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons, if you're going to be able to clear packs faster, or when it comes to boss fights, if Dave is going to be a massive DPS increase. But this is going to be a nice system to reward the monk for being able to manage their stagger properly, and then Dave is going to be essentially more effective as someone every time he is out. So if you are under heavy threat of stagger, Dave is not only going to help you split some of the stagger by staggering a portion of the damage that you would have taken, but he also will be more effective as you are being more effective as a tank, if that makes any sense. This is one of the minor buffs, and I would say Brewmaster's other buffs for stagger and movement will taunt. It's probably one of the more bigger highlights than the buff to Dave. Then we have a buff to the Celestial for Windwalker Monk. So the Battle for Azeroth version of Touch of Death is different than the current version of Shadowlands. The Shadowlands version returned to a Mr. Pandari-esque execute with a hefty cooldown. The BFA version is you will put up a debuff on an enemy, and then the more damage you do while that debuff is up, the harder Touch of Death would hit the enemy afterwards. It will hit for a set amount and add up extra damage or a portion of extra damage you do while it was on the enemy. So since that effect is going away, Blizzard decided to add that similar effect to your summon, which is your Invoke Zuen the White Tiger. So Zuen is going to claw at enemies and he'll cleave enemies, but Blizzard has added extra to him for a rank 2 version of Zuen. Zuen strikes your enemies with empowered lightning every 8 seconds, dealing 10% of damage you deal to those targets within last 8 seconds. So it will kind of look like this. So let me get a bit of a setup. We'll go for a little bit of a setup, get our images up and running, get Zuen up and running, and go for the most amount of damage we possibly can. I probably should have Fist of Fury first before the other ability, But we'll try to make sure we're just hitting the single target and not really cleaving, because that can give us a little bit of wonky numbers as well. And we are getting a bit of damage with Zoen. I think last time I was doing this, I ended up cleaving because the number looked like before, looked like it was doing much more. And Zoen is down, and quite a bit of damage that you bursted is actually empowered Tiger Lightning. This seems quite a big number. I know the tuning hasn't been finalized for monks by any measure, but this number is it's the top damage and ability. After all my Fist of Furies, after all my Bone Does Brew, after everything that I've used, empowered Tiger Lightning ends up being my top damage and ability. So Zoen is going to be kind of like a better version, and I'm sorry if you're an Elemental Shaman, but he's like a cooler version of a Fire Elemental. Because not only will he cleave multiple enemies, like every time I see auto attacks the enemy, which he does have a bit of auto attack, but of course his crackling Tiger Lightning is going to do the most amount of damage that he can provide. But not only will he cleave enemies in the melee, but also depending on how much damage you do, he can empower it even further to create quite a bit of burst damage. So Zoen has gotten a much stronger of a cooldown, and I wonder how scary it's going to be to have a Zoen clawing at you while you're locked down and stunned by a monk who is just PvPing you down with a Fist of Fury at the end after a leg sweep, so you can't even run away, and you can't even hit him back to CC him because you'll be parried. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this is going to go in PvE as well as in PvP. But this seems like a substantial buff to Zoen. It's not really a buff to what Windwalker will be doing outside of Zoen, but Zoen is going to be a lot stronger. So definitely be sure to use him inside of dungeon trash bags because he's a fairly short 2-minute cooldown, and be sure to use him in boss fights as like your big go. So monks have like a big bursty window again with Touch of Death that they had in BFA. Is this going to be better for monks, or is this going to be worse, having a big bursty window? I think in BFA, monks didn't really like having all your damage be all about Touch of Death and then trying to kind of keep up with DPS with everybody else outside of Touch of Death. So this might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. You guys let me know how you feel if you're a Windwalker main. And finally, we have some updates for the Mistweaver Monk. There are a couple of them, so it's going to be a lot of cooldowns for me to sift through here. But let's get through it. Let's just begin. So there have been also some buffs and changes to the Celestials. So Windwalker Monk, Mistweaver Monk actually has 2 Celestials. If you don't pick Invoke Chi-Ji, you get Yu'lon, the Jade Serpent, for 3-minute cooldown. Or you could pick Invoke Chi-Ji for a 2-minute cooldown, and both of those have changed. So let's start off with the shorter cooldown with Chi-Ji, just so I can put it on cooldown earlier, show you guys how it works, and we can get Yu'lon back a little bit faster. So some of the numbers have changed. So first of all, the mana cost of this ability has been reduced from 10% to 5%. Chi-Ji now attacks and assists the enemy, the monk, in dealing melee damage. So Chi-Ji is going to be like a mini Zoen. While Chi-Ji is active, physical attacks cause Chi-Ji to heal 3 injured allies with Gust of Mist and reduce the cast time of your next Envelop Mist by 33%, stacking up to 3 times. Envelop Mist is kind of like this tank kill ability that you would put up on a tank. It will increase the amount of healing they get from the monk, and with your Chi-Ji being out, you'll be able to put 1 or 2 of these out in like a Mythic Plus group, or maybe in a raid group, although I doubt it's going to have a raid capability. But anything is possible, I guess. It is early beta. Chi-Ji's Gust of Mist currently heals for 200% of the normal mastery heal, so the way he heals is going to be a little bit better based on mastery. It does not look like monks are convinced that mastery will be the way to go in terms of stacking it for Chi-Ji, but potentially could be there if Blizzard does balancing. Activating Invoke Chi-Ji, Red Crane clears Mistweaver or moment effects, so that is baseline. So if you use them, you will not get, I believe it's rooted or slowed, so you can just always avoid mechanics, especially if you're going to be in melee as a healer. You don't want to get killed by the melee mechanics. So that's kind of how he will work. So this will be interesting to see about Chi-Ji. Interesting part about Chi-Ji, so 3 attacks, 1, 2, and I'll have an insta-cast heal for Envelop Mist. But if I have Blackout Kick stored up, you actually can use 1 Blackout Kick with the storages to get yourself another kick available. So maybe monks will be able to kind of use that to spread hots on a bunch of players. And that'll be kind of interesting to see how that'll function. The Blackout Kicks, yeah, so you can spread it out pretty quickly. Another thing that they do is both of the, actually I guess I'll get to that after I show you, but that's going to be your Chi-Ji. Some of the things about Chi-Ji, it is pretty buggy. There are reports that Chi-Ji right now is only healing the monk when he's doing damage, so Chi-Ji is supposed to heal everybody else. Chi-Ji also has a target cap of 3 allies when you are doing damage. So this seems like a dungeon talent rather than anything. I would love to see this kind of playstyle come into raids at some point. I think it would be really cool. I know in raids that had the haste monk playstyle with rising mist or with all your hots, but I doubt you'll be able to play invoke Chi-Ji with this type of playstyle. So this seems like a really cool talent. I'm a huge fan of monks embracing more of this fist weaver playstyle, especially that there's now a legendary that I don't have in this monk right now. Where as you do damage, a portion of the damage as a healer is also going to heal an ally next to you, or I think it's like a couple allies near you. So this will be a continuous playstyle with a legendary that can feed back into it. I'm actually very excited to test this out in dungeons because I love the discreet playstyle, doing damage while being able to off-heal allies. So being able to do damage as a monk, as a Mistweaver, which Windwalker is the one spec that I think I'm the most familiar with, and being able to just take the playstyle of the Windwalker and use it as a healer and maybe be effective is exciting. But yeah, so Chi-Ji is here. He is still buggy. There are still some weird things about him. There are some weird interactions with certain abilities, but that's Chi-Ji. And then the other one we have is Yu'lon. So Yu'lon has been changed. Mana cost is now 5% instead of nothing. Yu'lon now idles next to Mistweaver in class Soothing Breath on injured targets, healing a target and up to 4 nearby allies. Soothing Breath gains benefit of Soothing Mist bonuses, similar to Summon Jade Serpent statue, which apparently there's still a bug about it because people in the comments of the blue post were like, wait, what does that even mean? Because the Jade Serpent doesn't really get any, or Jade Serpent statue doesn't really get any benefits by the looks of it. So that might be a little bit of an issue in the update, but this is what the dragon will do now. He'll just kind of spawn and he'll just channel heals at allies. And there is an interaction with both Chi-Ji and Yu'lon. When you press your Envelop and Mist, both of them will now use Envelop and Breath on a group of allies. Heals them for a bit every 1 second. Healing received from monks, healing is increased by 10. So on a tank, you'll be able to increase the healing by 40. But on allies, you'll increase the healing by 10. So this is like a nice group heal type of playstyle. I don't really know how well it will work for raids, but in a dungeon group, in a dungeon setting, this will be great. Especially in the Fistweaver playstyle, you'll be punching the enemy and you'll kind of hope that the heals will be helpful to your allies. And I think what the game does with the change to Chi-Ji in particular, if you are playing the Fistweaver playstyle, it wants you to stay in melee and just continue punching the enemy harder in order to help your allies escape certain death. So it looks like the Chi-Ji playstyle with these buffs that it has might be viable in dungeons, and hopefully it won't force the monk to roll out of melee while Chi-Ji is active and then start healing allies and spamming them full of heals to get through tough situations. But we don't really know how dungeons are going to go, but hopefully it'll fill out the meta here, or fill out the ideals that it has. Yu'lon is a simpler version, and a 3-minute cooldown is great for raid healing, especially if you want to heal from a distance, which quite a lot of monks actually like that type of playstyle, where you're able to heal enemies from afar. And it's effective, it works well, you're able to spread heals very, very easily. But yeah, I think it works pretty well. What else could be said? I guess it's really about all that could be said about the monk playstyle currently, as thus have been the buffs to the Celestials. Again, more updates are yet to come for monks, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the update, and I think that's everything that I have to cover. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Again, be aware that there are bugs with monk. Blizzard is aware of the bugs, so this update isn't meant to kind of ignore the bugs, it's just there to buff Celestials. I think some of these buffs are really cool. I wonder if Niuzao buff is going to be major as a non-Brewmaster main. I would have no idea, but it will be interesting to see if that might give Brewmasters a little bit more aggro management in AoE, because I'm hoping that the Dave, I hope he does kind of transfer his threat of stomps back to the monk, so that might be really cool. Windwalker buff I think is really, really cool. The damage you're going to do is going to be quite nuts. But the question is, do monks really want to have a big 2-minute cooldown to kind of play their abilities around? This is going to be a lot of damage, and I think with certain legendaries it could be a massive amounts of damage because there's so much burst with some of those Legos. But I wonder if this is exactly what the community wanted. Mistweaver buffs are quite interesting. I like how they're trying to improve Chi-Ji, and there's still updates to Yu'lon, and hopefully those updates will pan out once the balancing is done. But anyway, thank you guys so much for checking this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about these monk updates, and I'm probably going to make a double up video to give you more updates on some of the other things happening with monks in just a couple days. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see all of you in another video.